Okay, Joe, let's start with one New York team and move to another, but it seems like people and Seahawks fans are having a tough time getting over that loss to the Giants. Um, I personally think that down the road here, we're going to find out that this Giants team, which has now won 4 in a row, is not as bad as people thought when they came to town, and they're only going to get better. They seem to be doing things the right way.
Yeah, I really do think they deserve a ton of credit. Their defensive coordinator has been fantastic all season long. He's going to be a head coaching candidate this next cycle, and if he doesn't get a job this year, it'll be down the road. He's been tremendous, and that defense has carried the team. And you saw that in Week 13 against the Seahawks, only allowing 10 points to the Seahawks offense, which is to me unacceptable. As much as you want to tip your cap to the Giants and what they did disguising coverages and having a great game plan, there's no defensive scheme or defensive personnel out there that should be able to limit that offense to 10 points. And Brian Schottenheimer said something that was really alarming on Thursday, saying, you kind of recognize he had a bad game plan and they were trying to take away the deep shots, and yet they continued to go with that rather than adjust and say, hey, we got to go to a shorter and intermediate passing game because the deep stuff isn't there. That's something that they should be able to recognize and acknowledge in game and make those adjustments. It's not the first time all season that a team has tried to take away the explosives. You go back to the win against Arizona, I think it was week 11, if I'm not mistaken, but the one at CenturyLink Field, the Seahawks only had 2 passing plays over 20 yards, only 2 explosives, in which, early in the year, it was like 8 to 10 per game. It was chucking it all over the yard. So they can win a game and play well and be productive without the explosives. So they've shown they can do it. And yes, the Giants have a better defense than Arizona, but to still have this mentality of pounding sand for 60 minutes rather than recognizing, like, listen, this isn't going to work. There's a stubbornness to that I think is alarming when Seahawks fans have now what seems to be legitimate gripes of, hey, this team isn't adjusting on the fly and it's an issue. I think it's a very fair critique at this point.
I think so too. I think that Pete Carroll has made his share of mistakes, and I think as a coaching staff they have, and they have to own it. And I think he kind of alluded to it after the game last week. But it's the in-game adjustments since Pete Carroll's taken over here, over the last decade plus, that he's gotten a lot of criticism about. When the game goes along, he doesn't adjust. The timeout with 10 minutes to go in the game on a field goal was a wasted timeout in a lot of people's minds because they could have used it down the stretch. So, sure, I mean, we could sit here and pick apart the coaching staff and the decisions they have to make, but I just think that there's something there and they have to own it. And I am frustrated with the in-game adjustments as well. And Pete talked about it this week too, Joe, that they like to throw the deep ball. They like for those explosive plays, as you were talking about. But at some point, you've got to adjust and take what they give you.
Yeah, the whole game plan was deep, long developing routes, off schedule check down. Deep, long developing routes, off schedule check down. Nothing was on time. Nothing was in rhythm. Nothing, on schedule over the middle of the field and the intermediate levels. And it's a problem. And that's what led to 48 yards worth of sacks. And what led to a 11-yard intentional grounding penalty. So, yeah, I do think that's frustrating. And it just kind of Russell and Schottenheimer have enough time together where they should be able to make those adjustments on the fly. And so I do think that's concerning. Defensively, Shaquille Griffin also talking to reporters on Thursday saying, hey, we took that game lightly and we thought we were going to be able to just kind of beat them. And we let that game get away from us. And, there's no reason why they should have won that game, if we're being honest. And he's right. There's no reason why the Giants should have won that game. And I guess it's a nice little bit of candor and honesty that you can usually get from Shaquille Griffin. He's not one to kind of hide behind cliches when things are going south. And I think, I can appreciate that as a reporter. But it is interesting to point out, the combination of one, offensively not being able to make enough adjustments, and then two, get kind of team wide, not every player. Certainly there were plenty that, were up for that game like they needed to be. But the fact that Shaq went there and didn't mince words the way he did, I think is really telling that it was just a comprehensive failure against the Giants, and one that, as long as it serves as a wake-up call, can be just fine.
Okay, let's talk about the wake-up call. I mean, it's hard for fans and maybe even for the media to take the Jets seriously this year, and as an opponent on Sunday, 0-12, haven't done a whole lot of things right. They've come close in some games. They're coming off a monster letdown, heartbreaking game and a loss to the Raiders on the final play. So they fired their defensive coordinator and they got a new DC. But even their head coach, Adam Gase, admitted this week that it was very difficult getting over that loss, and probably one of the worst he's ever had to get over. So I have to believe that they don't want that game for the Raiders to beat them twice, meaning that this hangover is going to last until Sunday and they're not going to play with their heads on straight. But what do you see going into this Jets game with the Seahawks favorite? I think it was by 13 the last I checked.
Yeah, I think it's important to know that, this isn't a team that has nothing to play for, because it's different than being a 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 win team in a good division where the playoffs are out of it and a win doesn't mean much. You don't want to go down as being on a team that didn't win a game. It's just not something you want to be a part of, certainly as a coach and absolutely as a player, especially if you're a starter or someone who's looking for potentially a new contract somewhere else next year, or is a rookie there or a young player trying to build a culture. That's not how you want to be remembered. And so similar to the Giants, where they only had 4 wins going into that game, but they were in first place of their division, they had everything to play for. And they're not going to roll over at the sign of adversity. And they didn't. And the same thing's going to happen with the Jets. This is a team that's going to play hard, as they've shown the last couple of weeks. But that doesn't change the fact that they're still an inferior opponent. And to me, and we talk a lot about what Pete Carroll's mantras are and his philosophies and, and his whole thought of having every game be a championship opportunity. It's honestly a beautiful kind of motif, because it's human nature to have letdowns. And if you treat every game like a championship, theoretically speaking, then there is no big game. They're all big games. And that makes a whole lot of sense. The one that doesn't make any sense to me, and it's always been the one I've had a bone to pick with, is you can't win a game till the fourth quarter. That's not true. Games are won in the first quarter all the time. Games are won in the second quarter all the time. You look at that 2 weeks ago, the Falcons beat 43-6 against the Raiders. That game wasn't over. That game was over well before the fourth quarter. And so I think it's important that, okay, not only should you not take the Jets lightly, but you should know there's nothing wrong with acknowledging you're the better team and this is a game you should win. But have this mindset of win the game in the first quarter, embarrass this team, put your foot on the gas and don't let up for 60 minutes. Because all good teams, all elite teams are capable of having blowout wins every now and again. The Seahawks have not been able to do it over the course of the last couple of years. And yes, the other team is paid too, and it's not going to be able to happen every single week. We've seen that with the Chiefs. We saw that with the Steelers last week. But those teams have those on their schedule and on their resume. You look down their list, say, oh, they beat that team by 14, that team by 21, and then it goes on. Seahawks don't do that. This should be the game to say, hey, forget all that. From the moment of the opening kickoff, this is a team that let's go embarrass them. Nothing against them, no disrespect to them. We're the better team, and let's show it, and let's play like it. It's a big game because it's the perfect get-right game, but also, man, if things go south, there'll be chaos in the streets of Seattle in the land of the 12. So hopefully we don't have to experience that in the holiday season. Anxiety levels should be low. Everyone should be happy and healthy and enjoying themselves and their family and friends and not worrying about potentially the Seahawks losing to the winless Jets. But we'll see what happens next week, and I look forward to chatting about it.
All right, that sounds good. You're like you said, man. It is the ultimate get right game. So we'll see what happens on Sunday. Thanks, Joe.
Hey, I appreciate it, Paul.